Thanks everyone for arriving and welcome to the demonstration of Granite version 2.6 with Pastel Evolution integration. So I'm Craig Collins from Cradle Technology, and Cradle Technology is the owner and developer of the Granite warehouse management product. Granite has been around for probably the last 4 years in its current format. We currently have 27 sites mixed between ACCPAC and standalone and Pastel Evolution. So the first thing is, why do we need a warehouse management system? Well, in an ERP system like Pastel, the typical way that you see inventory or stock is a item code with a quantity in a warehouse. Now, what they try and do then is they try and expand the system to include bin locations so you can get some more granularity, and then you can also have batches, lots, and serial numbers. Now, one of the problems that happens in the accounting system is because of the way accounting systems work with the double entries and with the journals that need to take place. When you try and manage things like pallets or boxes, you end up with a huge amount of data flowing through your accounting system that is not accounting based, and this weighs down the accounting system. So what we try and do is extract that level of granularity out into the warehouse management system so that your accounting system can do what it does best, and that is accounting. And things like bin location management, things like product split across boxes and pallets and lots and expiry dates and serial numbers should all be extracted from the ERP system and kept in the warehouse management system. So that's the way that we've developed Granite, and that's the way that warehouse managements typically work on top of accounting systems. Now, with our Granite product, what we've done is we've targeted at a specific market space, and that is the ACCPAC Pastel Evolution type of market. So we're not aiming at the multi-million rand warehouse management product, which does all sorts of fancy functionalities, such as moving your pickers around automatically and telling them and optimizing their movement through the warehouse, because the typical client that we're dealing with is picking one sales order at a time or a route at a time. We don't need as much optimization. Similarly, they have less than 10 pickers. So when you have less than 10 pickers, you're not getting a massive amount of benefit by routing him around and automatically dictating where he goes next. But we also need to leave space in the market for the players who take 8 months to implement and who sit at the top end of the market. So Granite is firmly positioned in the mid-market, and that's probably where we're going to stay. So what happens is myself and my development team sit down and we argue over every bit of functionality that goes into the product. We try really hard not to bloat the product with too much functionality. So what I'm going to do is dive straight in. I will show you the Granite product, and I will show you the integration between Pastel Evolution and Granite, and I will explain how the system works. So the first thing that we've got is a log on onto Granite. This allows us to dictate how or what the person can and can't do. And effectively, in our look and feel, we can define the users, and within users, we can specify whether they can do picking or they can do document completion, etc. So we have the ability to do a containment of what the user can and can't do. The next thing we've got is a web browser interface for our scanner. Now, what this does is it gives us the ability to be product independent, and it also gives us the ability to run on things like tablets and smartphones in the future. So similarly, on the handheld product, you can log in and it gives you control of what we can and can't do. And the reason this is in a web browser is A, the performance and openness, but B, it means that we can deploy the solution to multiple places in the organization. So it also means that a PC operator in inbound can use the web interface to receive product and not have to go through a thicker client. So we typically find that while we install the client on as many PCs in an operation as possible, because it gives validation of what people are doing, and it gives us the ability to show the stock movements, what most of the work is done through the web browser interface. So you can see I've scaled this web browser screen to be roughly the size of a scanner screen, and this is what you will typically see on the scanner. In fact, it's probably a bit smaller like that. And we have inbound operations, outbound operations, various inventory operations, some pallet operations. Then there's some additional stuff for stock take, returns, lookups, data capture, which we can go into. So the first thing I want to do in Granite is show you master files. What we've got is we've got categories and types, which are defined just to allow us to slice and dice the data, filter, sort, etc. And you'll see a bit of that. But if I, for example, click on types, and I've got specific to master items, I've got food, stuff, and household, and specific to locations, I've got non-stock and a rack. So I can define a new type for a location, for example, and I can say it is a bulk floor, and what I'm going to do is specify that it doesn't apply to master items, it applies to locations, and I'm going to save it. So I've now got a new type defined, and that just allows me to go in and filter things. So then I look at my locations. Now, locations are quite important because what I do is I define individual locations in the warehouse, specific rack locations, bin locations, load bays, etc. And then I map them to the ERP warehouse. So this is the Pastel warehouse. I've got two Pastel warehouses defined. I've got main and work in progress, and those are and this is how I get transactions to flow into Evolution. So what I do is, if I move something between location A01-1 and A01-2, because they're in the same Pastel warehouse, nothing's going to happen in Pastel. In other words, I'm not going to do any inventory journals. I'm not going to move anything in Evolution. If I move something from A01-1 to work in progress, it would, because the ERP location is different, it would do the move in Evolution. So I can go and maintain one of my locations, and basically you can see all I've got is the name of the location, I've got the barcode that I've assigned to the location, and I've got the warehouse. Then I've got the type, and again I can choose one of the types that I've defined, and I've got categories if I choose to define categories, and then I've got site. We typically leave site empty for single site implementations, but if you've got multi-site implementations, by defining a site at a location level and a user level, it gives us the ability to filter that a specific user can only see a specific site data. So that's locations. Then I look at master items. So master items are the equivalent of your item master in Evolution. And these are just some that have been defined in previous demonstrations. You'll see that I haven't got anything. I've got a foot valve there, but I've got nothing specific related to pumps. So I'm going to use two examples of in pumps just to give us some illustration. What I'm going to do is you can see those are my current master items. I'm going to go into Evolution and create a new master item to show you that we have downward integration, and the master item can actually be maintained in Evolution. So what I do is I go into Evolution, I'm in the inventory items, and I'm going to add an inventory item. So literally I'm going to define this as pump to, I'm not sure exactly how pumps are defined, but 2 kVA is my item code, and I'm going to say it's a pump-water-2 kVA. I'm going to specify it as a warehouse item, and I'm going to click OK. So in Evolution, I've defined a new stock code, pump 2 kVA, and if I now go into Granite and refresh, you can see I've now got the pump in Granite. Okay, now you'll see that I misspelt it, so I'm going to go back into Evolution, and I'm going to fix that. Water, okay, back into Granite, refresh, and it's refreshed in Granite. So now in Granite, I can look at it and I can say, well, what haven't I defined in Evolution, and what additional fields have I got in Granite that I can define? So for example, if I was doing in a chemical company, I might want to automatically put it on hold whenever I receive it. So by clicking that button, it will immediately go into QC hold status on receipt or on creation of any item, any pump item in the warehouse. I can define a picking area or pick face for a specific product. Let's say I was in cosmetics and I have bulk in my bulk locations, and then I've got little individual lipsticks or individual fragrances sitting in a picking area. I can define the picking location for it and say it always gets picked from this location, and what is the minimum level and the optimal level to replenish that location. What I've also got is I've got the put away location, which is the default put away location. Again, it doesn't have to be put in that location. Granite allows you to put any product in any location, but what I do is I can define a default one so that that is my default bulk location, for example. I have expiry dates and batch numbers and serial numbers, which I can define in the system, and that is defined at an item master level. It allows me to manage whether a specific item has a batch or serial number. Okay, so what I've shown you is that I can modify and add an item master in Evolution, and it appears in Granite. I can edit it in Evolution and edit it in Granite, and I can set up default locations, etc. One of the things that is important is no change that we make in Granite goes back into Evolution on Item Master. So your warehouse staff don't make changes to Item Master. What I've also got is the barcode field. So in consumer goods, what I would be able to do is define well, firstly I can define a label name. So a specific item can have a specific label format in terms of receiving and the labeling that we attach to it. And then I can also define my barcodes and my unit of measures for receiving. So if I scan a case versus an each, I can pick up the unit of measure with the quantity and receipt it according to that quantity. Useful in the consumer goods type thing, probably not in a hydraulics organization. So that's master items. Right, so now what I do is I need to explain the basics of how Granite works with tracking entities. So Granite has a concept of a tracking entity, which is defined as a pallet or a box or an each of an item. So if I receive, let's say, 10 boxes of Kellogg's All Bran Flakes, what would happen is I can individually receipt and individually label those boxes. Each box could have a separate batch number, and I track and manage those boxes separately. So what happens is in Granite, under inventory detail, I have this concept of a tracking entity, which is a box. So in this case, I've got Kellogg's, and I've got I want to define that. I've got 4 active boxes of Kellogg's, box number 13, 14, 18, and 19, and that's the quantity of each box and the location that those boxes are currently in, and these two have got batch numbers. So effectively, in the warehouse management system, I am tracking an individual box level. Again, if I was in chemicals, I would be tracking an individual batch or an individual pallet or an individual drum. And likewise, if I'm in pumps or in hydraulics, I would be tracking either a box or a pallet of valves. Alternatively, an individual pump with an individual serial number would have an individual barcode. And you'll see more of this when I do receiving. But it's very important to understand that we have the concept of a tracking entity. Now, that is uniquely identified with a unique label on receiving. The label gets generated by Granite, and we during the receiving process, we stick it onto the product, and that's how we track it moving forward. So when we put it away in a location, we know where that specific box went in the location. We know the box's age. We know who dealt with it. When we pick from it, we know where the quantity coming off. So what properties has a tracking entity got? Well, it's got a quantity. It's possibly got a batch and serial number, an expiry date. It's linked to a master item, and a tracking entity can sit in a specific location. It can be moved between locations, and you can remove quantity from it or add quantity to it. So that's the concept of a tracking entity. And what's so unique about this concept is that we're not managing an item code in a location. We're managing a specific box of a product in a location, and that's why I can have the same box in multiple locations. Right. I'm now going to go into a couple of details about the inbound and outbound process. If I look at inbound and I look at my receiving execution, these are purchase orders that I've got in the system. So I've got a single purchase order in the system, P001, and I can click on it to zoom into it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Evolution and create a new purchase order. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate that we can create a purchase order in Evolution and it will appear in Granite ready for receiving. So the first thing I do is I go into to Granite Transact. So let me just order entry. And I'm going to create a purchase order. So I've just got Cradle Technology defined as a purchase order and as a supplier, and I'm going to say that I've got a you can see our order number is purchase order number 3, and I'm going to keep this simple. So I'm literally going to go to my item and I'm going to say we're going to buy some of one of these pumps, and I'm going to receive it into the main warehouse, and I'm going to order 5 of them. I'm going to define my price as $1,000. I'm then going to order, just so happens that Cradle Technology also sells Oral-B mouthwash, so I'm going to order some mouthwash from them as well, and because I want to demonstrate the multiple tracking entities, and in this case I'm going to order 400 bottles of mouthwash, and I'm going to say that the price is $20. Right, place the order and don't print the document. So going back into Granite, if I refresh, I can see I've now got purchase order number 3, and it's got 5 pumps on it and 400 mouthwash, which I haven't received anything against yet. So that's the purchase order. I'm now going to assume that that product arrives in the receiving bay. So I go to inbound, receiving, and I specify my purchase order document. So typically that would be on the delivery documentation, and you can see that I'm expecting pumps and I'm expecting mouthwash. So where am I receiving it into? What receiving location? I'm going to receive it into the receiving bay. What is the supplier's delivery note number, CRA 009 for example, and I now specify the stock code. Now typically the stock code is either in, let's say, a consumer goods environment, the stock code can be the EAN barcode or the SKU that's printed on the products that we're receiving. That is a stock code, it's not a unique tracking number. Okay. Likewise, in this pump, I know that it's pump-2 kVA. Okay. And again, that would be on the delivery documentation. The guy can type it in. Alternatively, if we've printed out a purchase order with those in barcodes, we could scan it, or the barcode is on the product that we're receiving. So for this pump, is there a batch number? I'm going to say there's no batch number, so I just press enter. And then this is the tracking entity. Now, in the case, there's a number of ways that we can implement Granite. We can let Granite auto-generate tracking entities. In that case, I'll just leave it empty. Alternatively, if I want to, I can define a serial number field. So I keep the tracking entity auto-generated by Granite, and I fill in the serial number field. But I could also use the serial number as my tracking entity. But in this case, I'm going to leave it empty, and I'm going to specify that there's 1 pump per barcode, but I'm receiving 5 of them. So if I go into my stock detail now and I refresh it, okay, I need to clear my filters, so the inventory stock detail. I've now got my 5 pumps all sitting in receiving, all with a quantity of 1 on them. Okay. Now in this case I've turned off serialization, so I don't have the serial numbers defined for the pumps, but I can have entered an individual serial number for each of these pumps. If I go to my receiving documentation, or my receiving execution, you can see purchase order number 3. I've received 5 of 5, and that line is now completed. And you can see I'm only 1% complete because I've got 400 mouthwash on there as well. Okay, so what I want to do is show you now my variance correction, because I'm busy receiving, if I look at my variance correction, this shows me the variance between Evolution and Granite. I currently have 5 pumps in my warehouse. I don't have any in Evolution because I haven't posted that receipt to Evolution yet. Okay, I will now go back into my receiving transaction and now receive some of my mouthwash. So I'm still receiving in the receiving area, and I'm now going to receive mouthwash, which is product code MW-OB-500 milliliters. And in this case, I'm going to define a batch number as November 2014, and I'm going to leave tracking entity empty. What's quantity per tracking entity? Let's assume I'm receiving boxes of 100, so I'm going to receive the quantity per tracking barcode is 100, and I'm going to receive 4 boxes. Well, yeah, 4 boxes. Okay, so my transaction successful. I go back into Granite and I refresh my my variance correction. You can see that I've now got mouthwash. I've got a variance on mouthwash. So in my warehouse, I've got 1,020. In my ERP, I've got 620. So what I'm going to do is go and take a look at stock detail, refresh. There's the 4 boxes of mouthwash, and they're all sitting in receiving. So now what happens is we can either have the person receiving post that, or we can have a checker who logs into the scanner and posts it. Alternatively, we can not allow the warehouse to post it. We can give it to accounts and they can go and post it. But basically, the posting operation says go into, okay, well, firstly, let's take a look at that purchase order in Evolution so we can see that there's nothing receipted against it so far. Okay, I'm going to open purchase order number P00003. What have I done? Purchase order number 3. Okay, so I've received nothing yet against this purchase order. Okay, I'm going to go into my scanner interface to receiving inbound. I'm going to say posting, and I'm going to now post the purchase order. So the checker would have said, okay, he's happy with the receipt, he's going to post it, and it's gone and posted it into Evolution. So now what you'll see in Evolution is that I've got a GRV. Okay, I've got a GRV against it. You can see there's my confirmed quantities are in place, and I've now got stock for pumps and stock for additional stock for the mouthwash. Okay, so going back to, I can go and look at that GRV, but going back to my inquiry or to my warehouse inquiries, and I'm going to look at my stock. You can see I've now got 5 pumps on hand, and I've got additional mouthwash on hand. So I've received the additional from the 620 that I had. I received the additional 400. If I go and look at Granite and I look at variance correction now, those items are no longer on variance correction because the quantity in Evolution matches the quantity in Granite. So while you're busy receiving, you'll see the variance is showing that the warehouse has received it, but not the ERP. And then once the GRV is confirmed, the ERP location comes up. One of the things that's important here is that we've got 2 modes of integration. One is I can create the GRV and post it automatically. The second is I can create the GRV and then not post it, have accounts go and I could save it, and accounts can open it, they can add additional costs, and they can manage it, check it, and then they can post it. Right, so just to summarize, I've shown you that we had a that purchase order has now disappeared from our receiving dashboard. That we created a purchase order in Evolution. It appeared in Granite. We then receipted it using the scanner functionality of inbound receiving, and we received it box by box, or for the pumps, individual pumps, and we then checked it and posted it. The post created the GRV in Evolution, and the stock is now sitting in Granite. So if I go to stock detail in Granite, that stock is all sitting in receiving. What I'm now going to do is go and move it into a rack. So I take my scanner and I go inbound, put away. Alternatively, I could just go inventory move. So what is my reference? In this case, it's just a put away, so I can leave it blank. The to location, I'm going to put them in A0111, and I'm going to now scan the barcode, which is the barcode we printed in receiving. Number 27, and if I refresh, number 27 is now in A01 rack. So literally I take my scanner and I scan each one. Okay, ignore that error. It's a I've got integration on moves set up, and and it's not allowed to do that move. So at an integration level. So I've just moved again into A01. I've moved number 28, and I'm going to remove number 29. So if I refresh, all three of those boxes of mouthwash are now sitting in A01. We can still see that the number 30 is sitting in receiving. I'm going to take the pumps and I'm going to move them as well. So let's go inventory move, and I'm going to say to location A021 and the barcode tracking entity number 22. This would have been scanned. Tracking entity number 23 and number 24, and I refresh them and they're in A201. So what happens is we use Wi-Fi scanners using an internet browser, and it takes place live. So the moment that I scan it into that location, it's reflecting as being in that location in Granite. Again, because it moved from receiving to A0201, there's no transaction in Evolution because both those locations are mapped to the main warehouse in Evolution. I can go and say what have I still got left in receiving by filtering on receiving, and those are all the items that are still in receiving. I can go and say what pumps are still in receiving, and those two pumps are still in receiving. Okay. Alternatively, I can say where are all my pumps, and that's where the pumps are. Okay. So we have a company in Johannesburg, Pro Hydraulics. They also do hydraulic equipment, pumps, valves, various parts. They service and maintain pumps, etc. They've been using Granite with ACCPAC for the last 2 years. And last week they had an audit from their principals in Singapore who use SAP and SAP's warehouse management system. When these guys arrived in Johannesburg and then looked at the warehouse, they did an audit on stock accuracy, and they couldn't find one error. It was 100% accurate. They went into ACCPAC, they saw that they had a specific quantity, they went and found it on the rack, the quantity matched. They took a scanner, they scanned stuff in the warehouse, and it was 100% match. They were so blown away by this that they actually started videoing it, and to show to their people back home. And they said they cannot get SAP to balance with their accounting system. They cannot get SAP to tell them where anything is, whereas Granite gives them 100% accuracy in the warehouse in Joburg. Right. So what I've shown you the inbound process. Let's go and take a look at the outbound process. If I go to outbound and I look at my order execution, I've got no orders in Granite ready to fulfill or ready to pick. So I'm going to go into Evolution and I'm going to create some orders. So I go to order entry transactions, sales orders, and I'm going to define a cash customer. Their order number is, let's use today's date, 24 November-Craig, and I'm not going to define, I can go and define addresses and things like that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to my item code, and I'm going to say that this guy's ordered some mouthwash. We want to ship it from the main warehouse. Sorry, not mountain bikes. Mouthwash. Okay, there's 1,020 available. He's ordered 310, and the price that he's going to pay, is say $30. Let's place that order. And I'm not going to print the picking slip. I could print the picking slip and use this picking slip for picking, but Granite's got its own picking slip as well. I'm going to create another new order, also for cash, and this one I'm going to say is 24 November-Rob, and I'm going to choose the pumps, also from warehouse main, and he's going to take 3 pumps. Right, so let's go back into Granite and refresh our dashboard, and we see that we have the 2 orders, sales order number 5, sales order number 6 in Granite. Sales order number 6 we want pumps, and 3 of them, and sales order number 5 we want mouthwash. Okay, what I can do now is I can go and choose to, if I choose a picking model where I pick sales order by sales order, I can go and select a pick slip and say print the pick slip. So what you can see is that it says I need to go and pick tracking entity number 11 and tracking entity number 12. Those are the 2 oldest ones, and they happen to be the ones that are still sitting in receiving. And the quantity on hand on that one is 120, and the quantity on hand on that one is 500. Now, I want to show you why it's chosen those ones, okay? Because that's tracking entity number 11 and tracking entity number 12. Those boxes are boxes that I receipted previously. So tracking entity number 11 and tracking entity number 12 are still sitting in receiving. Even though the new mouthwash is sitting in the racks, those ones are older. So that's why it's pointed me to go to the receiving locations. Okay, if I go and that's valid. You know, we're trying to force them to take the oldest stuff, but we're not forcing it. We're recommending they take the oldest product, and we're only showing that oldest product. It is possible for us to show the pick slip where we could show all stock, and you can go and say, well, let's take it out of the rack, and we've got various methodologies where we can go and filter and say, well, you're not allowed to pick from receiving, or you are. It does allow us to do cross-stocking by allowing us to pick from receiving. So what I'm going to do is, so that pick slip shows us that we've got to go pick those from receiving. I want to go and show you under transactions the date that I receipted that stock. So I'm going to say that for mouthwash, when did I do receiving? So let's just take a look. Okay, so in fact I didn't receipt those. I did what's called a take on, which was an inventory receipt rather than a receipt against purchase order. And number 11 and 12 I receipted on the 11th, on the 20th, and whereas the stuff I receipted today was the 25th. That's why you can see those ones are older. And user number 0 receipted those, and there were 500 in a tracking entity. Okay, so I've got that order. What I want to show you now is that I've got another piece of functionality called Pickslip Manager. Pickslip Manager allows me to look at the orders and combine lines from multiple orders into a single pickslip. So this would allow me, if I, for example, have an individual customer ordering putting in 5 different orders, I can go and say, well, I want all of his orders on a single pick slip to go and pick it. Alternatively, I could say, well, I've got 5 orders for pumps. Let me go and pick individual lines for pumps. Okay, and what I do is I highlight them. I can even go and modify the quantity to pick, and then I can go and create a new pick slip, and it will group orders or order lines together onto a new pick slip. And I can go and pick that. So I'm not going to use that approach in this demonstration, but I do have the ability then to, for example, go and define a route and go and select all items for a route and then put it on a pick slip. In this case, I want to pick order by order. So let's look at order number 6 and look at its pick slip. So it says that the pumps, I'm required to pick 3. What Granite always does is it shows additional quantity. So it shows the first 3, but then it shows an additional one, because you may not be able to find it all, so it tells you where you can find additional stock. And again, this is customizable. So it's telling me that I would like you to pick pump number 22, 23, and 24 first in location 8201, even though it's not going to force me. Okay, so let's go and do the picking operation. I go back to my scanner, and I go to outbound picking. I now scan my picking barcode. So in Granite, if I had printed this pick slip, that barcode over there is the pick slip number, sales order 0005, and that's what I'm going to scan as my picking document, SO0005. Where am I going to assemble the stock? I'm going to assemble it in load bay 1, and it's asking me to pick 310 mouthwash. Okay, I've got my picking slip that tells me I can get it from tracking entity number 11, so I go to receiving and I say I can't find tracking entity number 11, but I can find tracking entity number 12. So tracking entity number 12, and how many am I going to take from there? You'll see that tracking entity 12 has got 500 in its box, so I could fulfill my entire order, but I'm not going to. I'm going to take 200 from that tracking entity, and you can see I've now picked 200 of the 310. So if I go back to my order execution and refresh it, you can see order number 5, I've picked 200 of the 310 so far, and so that's my progress. I started picking at 9:11, so I've got picking statistics as to who picked it and when did they start and how long did they work on it. And I can also go now and I can look at my inventory variance. Again, while busy picking, your inventory variance will show you that you have a variance. So I have picked 200, but I can see that I've got stuff on at least on a sales order and on multiple sales orders, and my current warehouse stock is 820, whereas my ERP stock is 1020. The discrepancy is probably because I'm in the middle of picking. So going back to that sales order, I'm now going to pick the additional stock, but in this case I can't find the other stock in receiving. Somehow it's disappeared, someone's taken it away and they haven't scanned it into a location. So I'm going to go to my stock detail and I'm going to say, well, where else have I got mouthwash? I've got it in AO1 and I've got box number 27. So that's the one I'm going to take. I'm going to copy it. So I would go with my scanner, I'd go walk to that location, and I'd now scan my barcode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a barcode in that doesn't match. So tracking entity number, let's say number 20. Okay, it tells me this item is not on the pick slip. It's a foot valve. Okay, so I know that I'm validating that I can't scan a barcode for product that is not on my pick slip. I'm going to go to tracking entity number 27. It allows me to go in and it says there's 100 on that pallet. I know I need to pick another 110, so I'm going to pick the full 100. So I've now picked 300 of my 310, and you can see that tracking entity number 27 in AO1 has gone to 0. What we typically do is we filter out the 0 so you don't see them on the screen. I've got it there for demonstration purposes. So my stock detail has reduced on that specific tracking entity. Likewise, this specific box reduced from 320 down to 120 because I picked 200 from it. And if I go back to my order execution, I can see that I've picked 300 of the 310 for the mouthwash. Okay, so now in the meantime, I've got another picker who's gone to pick pumps, and he's going and he's taking his scanner and he's going to pick from pump number 22, 23, and 24 that are all sitting in location AO201. So he takes his scanner, he goes outbound picking sales order number 6, also assembling it in load bay 1, and he scans pump number 22. Specifies the quantity, he specifies pump number 23, and we can default that quantity so that it takes the quantity on the tracking entity if for a specific product that has where you don't have to specify a quantity, but in most cases we specify the quantity. So tracking entity number 24, and now it says order complete. I can't pick anything else against that order because I've completed it. So going back to my dashboard on outbound order execution, I can see that order number 6 has dropped off. If I want to go and look at order number 6, I can still go in here and look at order number 6, and you can see that it is completed. Right, so Order number 6 is completed. It's sitting in my dispatch location, and order number 5 is almost completed. We've picked 300 of the 310 so far. So in the meantime, my checker in the dispatch load bay has checked order number 6, and he's happy that everything on order number 6 is fine. There's 3 pumps on the order, and he goes and he says outbound posting, and he scans the document, order number 6, and it comes back and says invoice number 6 is generated in Evolution. That is now complete. So let's go to Evolution and let's go and look at that sales order. I'm going to go and open sales order number 6. You can see there's an invoice number, and I've confirmed 3 of the 3 that was on order. There's nothing on back order, and I actually generated invoice number 6 for it. Okay, if I go into, so automatically, as soon as I did posting, I created the invoice in Evolution. Again, I have the option of saving it and not posting it, so that accounts can go and confirm it, confirm quantities, add extra costs, and then they can invoice it. Alternatively, right from the dispatch cage, I can produce an invoice. So what Granite does is it allows you through your implementation process to define whether you want to generate an invoice in the load bay or whether you want accounts to generate the invoice by having specified that integration is turned on or off for posting. So again, in Granite, if I look at my inventory variance, there's no variance on pumps because I've completed the pick and posted it. So the number of pumps in Granite in the stock detail, if I go back to stock detail and I look at my pumps, I've got those 3 left. Oh well, I've got those 3, but all have a quantity of 0. What I typically do is don't show quantity of 0. So I've got these pumps left in stock and they're sitting in the receiving area. What I can do is go to transactions and I can say show me all transactions against pumps, and I did the receiving. Okay, the take on, that's where we just create the tracking entity. We normally hide those, but I did the receiving and posted them. What I did was I then moved them into locations from receiving to AO201, and I then picked them against order number 6, and when I posted it, I created invoice number 6. Okay, so I've got a full history of everything that took place against that stock code, but I can also go and say, show me everything that took place against a specific pump, and tracking entity number 22, I receipted it on that date. I then moved it and I posted it. What I would normally do is sort by date, and I posted. Some of the other things that we can do on this in the stock detail screen, show you so a little bit of the functionality in the screen. I can go and group by location. So I can grab the location and group by location, or I can group by stock code in location. So I've got my stock code, and let's say I want to filter on pumps. I can now see that I've got pumps and I've got them in that location over there. Okay, so I've shown you just some basic functionality around picking. One is that we created sales orders in Evolution. We picked against the sales orders either by scanning individual tracking entities. Note it didn't ask me for the item code and location. It asked me for the tracking barcode. So what it does is it doesn't need to know, Granite knows where that tracking barcode is. So we don't have to specify which location we're picking from. Okay, we scan the unique tracking barcode that's on that pallet or on that pump or on that box or on that drum of chemicals. Right, what I want to do is just complete that last one, outbound order execution. This sales order number 5, we've got a back order on it. What I'm going to do is just show you what happens if you try and overpick. So I'm going to go back to outbound. I'm going to go carry on picking this, and it also shows you that I can put down a picking slip and then I can carry on with it later, or I can ship what I've got and then carry on later as well. So I'm going to go and choose some an additional box of mouthwash, but I'm going to enter more than the 10 that we're asking for. Okay, so I'm going to go to this tracking barcode number 28, and I'm going to pick from it. So tracking barcode number 28. There's 100 on that tracking barcode. I require 10, so I'm going to put in 20. So the quantity has exceeded the order quantity. So we have the capability to manage we validate the product, but we also validate quantity that we picked so far against an individual line on the sales order. I'm going to not pick the rest of that. I'm going to leave it out as outstanding, because what I want to do is I want to post it. So again, we picked 300 of the 310. The checker says he's happy with it, and he posts that document, sales order number 5. So it produced invoice number 7, and if I go to order execution and refresh it, okay, I've got a couple of settings. I've obviously marked it as complete. It shouldn't be marked as complete. It should actually still show as a back order. And again, those are some of the options that we set up in Granite. But you'll see, if I go back to that order, invoice number 7 was generated, and of the quantity 310, I've picked 300. Okay, now it's quite possible that I haven't got it set up to manage back orders, but what would have happened is I could in theory go and pick see that that's a back order of 10, produce another picking slip and go and pick that additional 10 against that order. So Granite as well as Evolution will manage the back order and will allow me to pick that on the next time I've got stock or on another pick run. Right. So just to summarize, I've shown you that I've received a document in Evolution, or I've created a picking slip in Evolution, which dropped down into Granite. I picked against it. When I was happy that the picking was completed in the dispatch area, I posted. That created the invoice in Evolution. It reduced the stock in Granite at a box level, and the stock was reduced in Evolution at a quantity level. If I go look at my stock summary excludes the tracking entities, so it tells me the individual quantities, but it has got location and it has got batch numbers on it. So that's why for a single line I can see multiple items. What I can do is I can exclude location, I can exclude batch number, so it just shows me the quantity in total for a specific product in the warehouse. So all of this type of thing is customizable during the implementation process. Right, couple more things, and before we wrap up, I've shown you transactions and I've shown you the transaction history. So for a single product, I've shown you that we manage every single thing that happens on a single box. We keep a record of. So we've got a full traceable record of every transaction that took place against every box, who performed the transaction, what the quantity from to and action quantity was, from to locations, transaction type, and then whether it was integrated or not into Evolution, whether there were comments or not, what the type of transaction was. So we have a lot of functionality around that. Some of you may have noticed, if I went to stock detail, that I've got this pallet column. What that does is it allows me to take individual boxes and put them onto a pallet. Now, the pallet is just a carrier. It just allows me to group together a bunch of tracking barcodes and put them onto a pallet so that I can do an easy move of the entire pallet, or I can pick an entire pallet. So we're busy with a pharmaceutical company in Joburg at the moment, where every pallet of product has got an individual box or multiple boxes on it, but they want to track everything at a box level because they pick eaches from boxes, but they can also pick a full pallet. The other thing is that every pallet has got a batch number, so all the boxes on that pallet have got the same batch number, and all the boxes on that pallet have the same expiry date. So what we do is, during the receiving process, we specify that we're receiving again, and we're putting it on a pallet, and then the tracking entities. So all the tracking entities that for that pallet have got a pallet number associated with them. I can then, when I move, just move the pallet, and it moves all the tracking entities. So pallet is a way of carrying stuff. Again, if I'm doing interbranch transfers, for example, I could put all of the boxes onto a single pallet, and then when it arrives on the other side, or when I put it into in transit, I can just scan the pallet. Just on transfers, I think it's important if I've got, let's say, 2 branches or 2 warehouses, and I want to transfer stuff between the two. One of the companies we're busy working with, in fact, I'm going there straight after this presentation, is a company that does beds. So what we've done is we've defined in Evolution a warehouse called in transit, and then we go into Granite, into the locations, and we define a new location for each truck. So for example, I've got their truck ND1002, and the truck is defined as an individual location in Granite, but it's linked to the in-transit warehouse in Evolution. That means that when I scan tracking entities into that location, into the truck, it automatically moves that stock in Evolution into in-transit. When it arrives at the new warehouse in Durban or Cape Town, we scan the same tracking entities off the truck, and it moves it from in transit into the Durban location. So at any time I can see in Granite what truck is it on, but in Evolution I can see that it's in transit. So I'm managing it at a granular level by truck and tracking entity. In Evolution I'm managing it with an item code and quantity in the in transit location. And at any time, if something is not scanned off the truck or it gets lost, I see that it's sitting in transit, and I can then define a new location. And what I can define is, say, lost in transit, and I can define a warehouse in Evolution as lost in transit, and anything that didn't arrive, I could go scan into lost in transit, or I can enter the tracking entities so that we've got it encapsulated, so the truck is empty but it's sitting in a warehouse lost in transit. So we have a number of ways of setting up, by setting up warehouses in Evolution and different locations in Granite, we can do those moves automatically. Okay, just to wrap up on the scanner, I have got a couple of other functions like stock adjustments. So I can go to inventory adjustments, and I can perform a quantity decrease against a specific tracking barcode, and it will perform a inventory journal in Evolution. Similarly, I can do an inventory reclassify. So let's say they've receipted stock, but they took the product on with the wrong stock code. Instead of it being 1 kilo boxes, it's actually 500 gram boxes. I can go and define I can reclassify the product, and what it will do is it will do an inventory journal up and down against the one inventory item to the other inventory item. All of these are user defined, so I can specify which users, the administrator can do it, but not the operator in the warehouse. I can also go to my lookup function, and I can say a lookup of a tracking entity and scan the barcode, and what it tells me is that that specific barcode is mouthwash. It's currently sitting in A01. There's 100 in stock. There's a batch number of November 2014. So at any time I can walk up to a tracking entity, I can scan it, and I can get the detail of that tracking entity. Really nice. Instead of using a cycle count, what you do is you just scan tracking entities and check them. This is what Pro Hydraulics does very, very well. They have a guy, whenever the pickers are not busy, they say go into that aisle and just go and scan barcodes and check that they're right. Okay, so it's not a cycle count, it's not formal, it's purely a check, but it does allow them to do a very good match of what's physically there to what's in Granite. Now, what's really important, we tell everyone in our implementations that the key to Granite is it's a physical system. So it's not about theoretical. It's not about, well, theoretically I've got the stock sitting in these locations. It's about trying to get a 100% physical match to box or item or pump or drum or pallet. And the whole point is that at any time, if I go into my warehouse and I scan a barcode, I should see that it's correct according to Granite, and physically it's correct. Likewise, everything in the warehouse should be labeled. Everything should be in a location. And if I get that discipline right of checking everything, then I've got a fairly good match of my physical to my actual. Company Rance Timbers down in Stutterheim, they're a sawmill. They have 3,500 bundles of wood. they have 100% stock accuracy. Every single bundle can be verified and is checked. Now, when we first went in there 3 years ago, whenever they got a sales order, they had to send someone down onto the floor to see if the stock was there. With Granite now, they can trust they have 100% stock accuracy, and in fact, their stock controller gets very upset if there's one bundle wrong during stock take. So talking about stock take, we have two stock take functions. We have one which we call status control. It's very, very simple. All you do is you identify tracking entities and you move them into stock take mode. And so I would, for example, go in here and I'd say I want to take all washing powder, let's go washing powder, and I'm going to take all tracking entities for washing powder. Okay, so I've got mouthwash as well, so let's filter additionally washing powder. I'm going to take all washing powder tracking entities and I'm going to put them in stock take mode. Okay, by doing that, by clicking stock take and putting a comment in, I put those into stock take mode. Then what I do is I take my scanner and I simply go to stock take and return them to stock, and I scan the tracking entities. What that does is it says, go and put this stuff into stock take mode, now go and scan them. So we're not verifying quantities, we're just verifying that we found the tracking entities, and it puts them back into stock, which means that anything left over I can go and scrap because I haven't found it, or I can go send it to go and look for it again. That's a very simple status change type of stock take. But then I've got a very comprehensive stock take, which is over here. If I go to stock take, I can start a new stock take. I can define a stock take session as being November 2014, and I can say either stock take by location or stock take master items. So I can say I want to stock take all mouthwash and all Kellogg's All Brand, or I can go and say I want to stock take all household products, and I create a new stock take. Okay, that would create a new stock take session. Now let's do that, and I then go to my control center, select the session. Okay, I'm not sure, I didn't configure this correctly, so I probably didn't do it. Let me do that again. Start a new session, November 2014, and define household products. Save it. Go back to my stock take and refresh, select the session. There's my November 2014. So those are all my household products, and that's all currently unscanned. If I go to my scan screen, it shows me what's been scanned or not. So what I now do is I go and take my scanner and I go and perform a stock take. So what happens is, under stock take, I go to my stock take function and I say, what session am I busy scanning against? It's November 2014. Is this count 1 or count 2 or count 3? So I'm saying I'm doing count 1. Go to the location, and this is A01-1. What is the tracking entity barcode? Tracking entity, and I scan it. It's number 28. And what is the quantity that I've found there? Let's say 100. Okay, and tracking barcode number 29, and that one I can say the quantity is 90. Okay, so now if I refresh my session, those two that I've scanned have dropped off my unscanned list. If I go to my scanned list, they're sitting over here, and I can go and filter them. I can do various things with it, but I can see that one, my opening count and my on-hand quantity is 100. My count is 100, so it's green. So it says that I'm happy with. This one over here says that my opening count was 100, but I only counted 90 in count 1. So what it's rolled that up over here as my opening count of 200, my count 1 is 190, so it's not recommending that I go and do anything yet. If you'd see the recommendation, if this did match, it would say count 1 is my recommendation. And I can now, I don't want to go into too much detail here, I can go and I can do an update of quantity, I can do an update of location, I can go and apply my recommendation of either count 1 or the recommended count, and I can go and apply this data to either the quantity or the location, and then you will see under processed that those stock codes are processed. When everything is off unscanned, or I can't find stuff which I'm going to then scrap, I can also go to my scanned data and I can say when everything is processed here, then you'll see it all in process. I can now go and export my CSV and update my stock account in Evolution. So we've got a fairly comprehensive and very well tested stock take functionality. So of our 27 sites, most of them are using the stock take functionality, and it was built in conjunction with one of our customers in Namibia. So we spent quite a lot of time with him building that stock take functionality to be really, really useful. And we've had rave reviews from the guys using the stock take functionality. Right. I think that just about wraps everything up. There's quite a lot of additional functionality that we don't really have time to go into. I can do, for example, especially for the guys who do manufacturing, what the way we handle bill of materials and stock. Granite doesn't manufacture against a bill of materials, so the bill of material module is currently excluded from Granite because that's manufacturing, not warehousing. So what we do is, if you create a pastel bill of materials, it will actually create a transfer document here, which is just like a picking document, but it will require you to pick stock for your work in progress location. So we pick it, and then we do a transfer. When you post it, it actually does the transfer of that stock. It's a standard move into the work in progress or manufacturing location. Then you run your bill of materials against the manufacturing location, which consumes the stock in there, not from your warehouse. That will then make your finished goods item in Evolution. What we do then in Granite is you, again, using your scanner, would go inbound take on, and you go create your finished goods item with the take on function in Granite. That doesn't do integration into Evolution. So what happens is you've already done the Evolution bill of materials to create your stock in Evolution. The take on creates and labels the stock in Granite. You then move it from the work in progress area into the warehouse, and it does the move for you in Granite and in Evolution as well. So typically what we've done is we use the work in progress location in Evolution as a warehouse to isolate the bill of materials to only consume and only create in that location, and then you use Granite to move it into that location and to receive it from that location. And that's how we currently deal with bill of materials. One of our customers is Paramount Mills in East London. We've done a little bit of customization on the integration where they actually do the take on, and it does do the bill of materials transfer. So it is something that we are able to do, and it's something we're working on. It's just not something that we have got in standard product at the moment. So if there's a bill of materials requirement, it's something we analyze and then we look at separately. Okay, so that about wraps up on the Granite side and wraps up on the demonstration. Just to round off in terms of how our licensing works, we license per company database. So if you've got a single Pastel company database, and Granite is running on that company database, then what we do is we license for that database only. We give you unlimited licenses on clients and unlimited licenses on scanners. We did originally try and license at a scanner level, but you know what? People use a web browser from any device and anywhere. It's really difficult to control, so we just built it into the product costing that you can have unlimited scanner licenses and you can have unlimited PC licenses. It's purely a single Granite database, maps to a single Pastel database, and that is licensed. The license fees work out to roughly 100,000 Rand, and then we have a implementation which is typically a 4-week engagement. So we have the first week, which is technical setup and getting the whole infrastructure working. The second week, which is a user acceptance testing and testing of process, and then 2 weeks of hand-holding. That 4 weeks is not necessarily 4 consecutive weeks. It can be broken up over a longer period of time. And it also depends on how strong your on-site people are in terms of their capability to do the hand-holding and the ongoing support as to whether we need to spend the full 2 weeks or less on site. Rob's team in Zim is going to be working with us on any implementation. So the first line support and first line handholding will come from his team. And it's our business model to use business partners. So while we typically get involved in the first few projects, after that we want the reseller, the Evolution consulting team, to take ownership of implementation. And in fact, we would like them to do the whole thing. We might just get involved in 1 or 2 days of consulting upfront to get the design right and to get the technical configuration right. Okay, that just about wraps it up. Rob, if you want to switch on, if there are any questions.
Thanks very much, Craig. I'm going to just start off quickly with one question. Just even if you were starting off, what would be the sort of entry-level scanner, where you were demonstrating the scanner functionality? What sort of cost would we be looking at? Just a ballpark cost for that scanner.
So while it can run on on an Android tablet or it can run on a phone, they're typically not rugged enough for warehouses. They're really good to give to the supervisor to do a stock check, etc. But the guy who does the picking, the guy who does movements in the warehouse needs a typical industrial RF scanner. So the entry level in the RF scanners come in at about 16,000 Rand, and they go up to 28,000 Rand if you need something really rugged, if you're working in a mine or in a mining store, or if you're working outside and you want something waterproof. So anything 16,000 typically is the entry level on a scanner like that. So the recommended one is about 23, but that's really for rugged environments and for the high-end warehouses.
Okay, thanks. But so if your average start-off warehouse is looking about 16,000 Rand.
Correct, and then you typically need a label printer. So a label printer in receiving will typically cost you, an entry-level desktop label printer costs about 6,000 Rand, 6,500 for network enabled, and then a mid-range industrial one that you could put in a sort of in the manufacturing operation comes in at about 12,000 Rand.
Okay.
And then wireless network, we in a small warehouse where you only need one radio network point, you could pretty much put anything down. But what we do recommend in large warehouses is that we use an industrial radio network point, so either a Motorola or a Ubiquiti or a Cisco access point. And one of the reasons for those is that they allow rapid roaming. So if I'm moving between locations where I move between the access points, you want to have seamless roaming, and that's where the Cisco and Motorola stuff comes into its own. And those industrial access points, once you put them in the roof, you never look at them again. But they're fairly expensive. We typically put them into an industrial ruggedized box with additional external antennas and a surge protector, everything built into a box. And that typically comes in at about 8,000 Rand for a unit. And a large warehouse with, let's say, 1,000 pallet spaces, you need, that's not a large warehouse, but a warehouse with 1,000 pallet spaces, you would typically need 2 or 3 of those access points.
And what would you, like a large warehouse, what would you convert in square meters? What typically would that be?
So in square meters, that would probably be about 2,000 square meters. So 100 by 200 or 150 by 150, somewhere along those lines. The typical access point will give you a 50-meter radius. So if it's an open warehouse with fairly high roofs, then you can work on a 50-meter radius. It's not too difficult to work up, but we do recommend that's for budget purposes. We recommend a site survey where we come in to check depends on how tightly stacked and how high your racks run and things like that, and what your roof is made of, as to whether you get bounce and you get the full 50 meters or not.
Okay, excellent. Can I just throw it open, Charles? Have you got any questions you want to throw?
I just want to ask on expiry dates, like the chocolates.
Okay.
Does the system allow to, so you've got an expiry date for December?
Yes.
And you receive stock that is expiring prior to that. Does it automatically flag, or?
It doesn't automatically flag. What it does do is it allows you to define an expiry date per box on receiving. So for every item in stock, I would have an expiry date, and what it allows me to do is go and look at expiry, so that I can show anything that's going to expire, and this can be defined as to show me what's going to expire in the next month or in the next 2 months or in the next week. Okay, so what we do is we record an expiry date per tracking entity, and then we report on what is going to expire shortly. But we don't force the expiry date. And again, what we try and do during the picking process, we're showing the oldest stock, we're showing the stock that you should be picking, but again, we don't force it. Okay, so it is a management or supervisory task to go and look at your expiry report on a daily basis to say, well, what's going to expire soon, and then make sure that gets picked in the warehouse.
Can I just add on there, Craig? I think when you mentioned in the last presentation, if you're using your expiry management in the Granite, then you use it independently of lot tracking and evolution.
Correct.
So you wouldn't be capturing the expiries in the lots and evolution.
Absolutely.
You'd just be capturing it into Granite.
Dead right.
With the expiry tracking in evolution.
Correct, dead right. We try and do it in Granite specifically so that we don't have to have it in evolution, so we can keep evolution lean and slim. Granite is designed to handle it at an individual box level. While we haven't got any really clever expiry date functionality other than managing it at an individual tracking entity level and reporting on it, we're open to suggestion on expiry dates, because I think it's one of the areas where Granite excels in terms of managing batch and lots. And we're finding, when you have batch and lot numbers and expiry dates turned on in something like Evolution, it becomes a real nightmare to manage it. And whenever you do a transaction, you have to specify what batch you took it from. So without scanning, it becomes really, really tricky. What we try and do is remove it from Evolution, and the scanning makes it work really well at a Granite level. But if we are lacking functionality in that area, that's an area we are happy to look at and expand on. So in our annual licensing fee is, so you've paid 100,000 Rand for your upfront license, then there's an annual license fee of 20,000 Rand. That gives you access to any updates and any new releases. We can do that free of charge remotely, but if it has to be done on site, then obviously the on-site charge is charged. And most of our customers, we keep up to date to the latest version based on whether we know if it's going to break something in their process or not. And so if you, for example, give us some recommendations on what you would like to see on expiry date, it may appear in the next version, and you would automatically get that if your license fees are up to date.
Just for Charles's benefit, the clients you've got in Namibia that we spoke about the previous time, they're a FMCG sort of client, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. So what they do is they manage, they import foodstuffs, things like coffee, German beer, various German products, olives, vinegar, things like that, and then they distribute that to restaurants as well as retail outlets. And so they manage things by pallets, lots, and they've got quite a big warehouse with quite a large volume of turnaround. They have 15 active pickers at any one time.
Okay.
That's a company called African Marketing in Namibia.
African Marketing in Namibia. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then can anybody, Charles, any more questions? Did that answer your question, Charles?
Yes.
On the
I want to check how we can take advantage of the Granite system in the fuel industry.
In the fuel industry. Okay. Right. That might be. Sorry. This lady came in just after we were introducing everyone, Craig.
Yes.
So, could you just give us a quick? What company is that? Okay. And you guys are importing petrol from, say, through the pipeline or through your own trucks? Okay. Okay. I think for that, Craig, just to help you out, we've got another solution we're working on for the fuel,
yes,
where we're looking at being able to calibrate stock, and so if they're dipping tanks and all that, it automatically works out the quantity based on the tank, the temperatures, and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So I don't think your Granite would be sort of relevant
Yeah, not really a good fit. Unless you can still, a tank can be a tracking entity, and you can manage the quantity up and down. So when you do that dip, you could enter it, but we don't have an integration into any automated level measurement, for example. And it's not a market that we're currently exposed to.
Yeah, funny enough though, we've actually just for Zuba done a lot of work. I'm sure they're similar to you guys. So we can show you that separately.
Okay, guys, I just want to stop this recording. So thanks very much for that presentation. We can still chat afterwards, but that wraps things up.